And now, the Rink Rap Podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
Welcome back to Rink Rap at Forever Blueshirts. I'm Jim Cerny. Really pleased to welcome aboard the former general manager of the New York Rangers, the guy, of course, who led them to the 94 Stanley Cup championship, and the host of NHL Wraparound podcast, Neil Smith. Neil, thanks for a few minutes as always today. You're certainly a special friend and a special friend of the show. And unfortunately, bring you in today to at least start talking about, sad news, the passing of Larry Brooks today. So when you did hear the news, what were your kind of initial thoughts and memories that came to mind?
Well, when I first heard about this, Jim, I heard that he was not doing well only last week. And I was shocked. Actually, when I was told, the person that told me said that Larry's not doing well. And my immediate thought was Larry Plow, because I had worked with Larry Plow for so long. I couldn't imagine, never even thought of Larry Brooks. And he said, no, Larry Brooks. And I was like, oh, my God. And so then today, when I got the notification that he had indeed passed, I just had deep sadness, and still do, obviously, for his family and his grandchildren. He was in the part of his life where he was really enjoying, everything that he had worked for in his life, giving his kids a good life and then having grandchildren. It was unfortunate that his wife predeceased him. I know that was very tough on Larry, but this is just sad news. It's way too early for him to leave us.
Absolutely. And I know I've used the phrase, the adjective giant, like giant, a titan in the business as a hockey reporter, a throwback to another time, but that was able to transport that, bring that time to the current coverage of the NHL. There was a genius to him, and he drove some people crazy, like him, love him. But I thought the New York Post nailed it in their story today. Mike Vaccaro did a great column. He said, like him, love him, you had to read Larry Brooks. If you were a hockey person, whether you're an executive like Neil Smith, a reporter like Jim Cerny, or a fan like everybody watching here, you had to read Larry Brooks. To touch on that, how, and certainly you had a long history, with him. There were the Islander days when he was with the Devils, and of course, as a reporter for the Post.
Yeah, I did have a long history. I knew Brooksy since, way back when he was with the Devils, and then he was covering the Devils actually in '94. That's one thing that people might not realize, is that Mark Everson was the writer for the Rangers during '94, and Larry Brooks took over the Rangers after we won the cup. So I'm not sure if it was that next year, the lockout year, or the year after. However, he became our beat writer, and then he morphed into a columnist. And you're right. Larry's columns were always interesting. You could like them, you could hate them, you could think they're full of BS, whatever, but you still had to read them. And there are similar people around hockey that you feel that way about, but there's very few. And certainly Larry was one of them, that you wanted to read his stuff. If it was because you wanted to find out something, or because you just wanted to get angry, you could have a good time doing that when you read Larry's stuff. And his take on it was, pretty slanted, depending on which way he was leaning. But I built a pretty good friendship with him in my post-Ranger days. As we all know, his wife passed away a number of years ago during COVID, and that was extremely hard on him. And I reached out to him a number of times, and we had some great heartfelt conversations about that. So it's too early, and I'm very sad for his family.
Yeah, and you touch on something there. How you reached out when his wife passed away, and the thing about Brooksy too was, listen, he's a hard ass. It was tough, kind of breaking through that wall and everything. But when you did get to know him a little bit better, and you saw his incredible soft side towards his grandson, and how that look, I never saw that look in Larry before until he talked about his grandson and playing hockey and going to see his grandson and going to practice. And, there was this different side to him. But people did see that. The people that really got to know him, executives, players, there was that respect for who he was as a columnist. And yeah, you get pissed off at him, but maybe the best example is Torts, right? Everybody think, oh, Torts and Larry, they hate each other. We've seen the video, how they went after each other. And yet there was that respect there, though. Yeah, they got hot. They went after each other. And then it was water under the bridge, and they moved on. And it's not like that with everybody, right? Somehow he was able to do that. And I think it starts with the respect factor. And I'm wondering if you see it the same way or if you have a totally different perspective.
No, I sort of do see it the same way. And it's a culture within hockey, and the writers are part of hockey. It's not just the hockey players. It's just not Canadian thing. It's just not any one thing. It's a big group of people that are involved in the sport. And there is a respect for each other, whether you battle or not. There is a respect level that you have for the other person within the sport. And I had horrible battles with Larry. I called him some names and things that I'm not very proud of today, but it was all in the course of doing my job and him in the course of doing his job. And when that job was over, you didn't hate the guy. You didn't dislike the person. You actually just didn't like what he was doing when he was doing that role. But you could, if you were man enough, you could separate the two things, the person from the role that he had to play. I had to play a certain role within that whole play that we did back in the 90s, and I did the best I could. He was doing the best he could, and you have to take that into consideration. And I think John Tortorella would say the exact same thing. I think he would say that he got pissed off with Larry, that they had some battles, but at the end of the day, he didn't hate Larry Brooks. He hated the columnist or the writer or the negative guy that was putting stuff in the newspaper and embarrassing his players. That's who he hated, but he didn't hate Larry Brooks. And that's exactly the way I feel. And that's the way, people will say to me all the time, oh, you and Mike Keenan, you don't like Mike Keenan. And I'm like, that's not true. I like Mike Keenan, the person. I didn't like working with him, and I didn't like how he handled some things, but that wasn't himself. That was him in his role as the coach. So I think we all have to take that into consideration. And those of us, or if there are people out there that can't separate the writer from the person, shame on them. Come on. We got to grow up. So, you know what? I very much enjoyed my time with Larry and really have a deep respect for what he did within this industry.
It's interesting too. In the Post article, Mike Vaccaro's a great story in the New York Post today. Listen, they worked together side by side. They worked for the same paper for 3 decades or whatever together. Vaccaro knows him real well. He had a quote in there actually from current Rangers owner James Dolan, and I'm paraphrasing right now. I don't have the words in front of me, but basically talking about how much he appreciated these one-on-one meetings he would have with Larry that never ended up in a column, was never discussed publicly, but he actually sought and took advice from Larry Brooks. Like, that's how influential, quote unquote, a role he became. We're talking about a hockey columnist, but yet he's sitting, I'm not saying every day, but from time to time, according to James Dolan, that was the case. And I get it. I know your history with, the Dolans and everything, but I think it still speaks to the respect, again, that I go back to with Larry, that, that this owner thought enough of him, again, no matter what you think about the owner, that the owner thought enough of him to bring him in and say, well, let's hear what this guy's in the locker room every day. He's well sourced. I know he's tapped into my GM and my assistant GM and my coach and everything, and just wanted to listen to what Larry had to say. Just curious from your perspective as a former GM to hear an owner say that, what it makes you think.
Well, to be honest with you, it makes me think that Jim is smart and strategic, because if you have the number one hockey writer in your office and you're treating him really well and everything is off the record and nothing ever shows up, it's a pretty good way to probably get the guy to look at you a little bit more favorably. So again, I think that what it speaks to me is the amount of respect that Jim Dolan had for Larry Brooks and the fact that he wanted him on his side. Now, does that mean that Larry was going to write all positive things about Jim and his club? No, but it was strategically smart to make sure that you were friendly with the guy that's got the most say in the city about your franchise and your building. So I do agree with you that there was a deep respect there, but I think the respect really came from the fact that this guy's a big time influencer, meaning Larry Brooks. And so I better get to know him and see how he thinks and see if he's got anything that I could glean to do better with my club.
Yeah, that's a great phrase, right? Big time influencer in this day of, this generation, well, not our generation, but this generation, it's all about the influencers, right? But even in our generation, there's a different kind of influencer for sure. That I thought that was a great phrase that you used there. It's a changing of the guard, this whole dance between teams and players and executives in the media these days. And I've talked to younger reporters, people that are just starting out or just new to the beat, new to the league, whatever it might be, and say, I don't want to sound like that guy, but boy, when I broke in and for a long time, boy, that was great. Like, I really felt like I knew the players. You go down before a game and they're working their sticks and you had access to these guys. And I felt like you knew them better than the wall that's put up now. And that's no disrespect to the players or PR people or how things are done. It's just different now. And you had such a great way with the media. And I'm sure part of it was, listen, you're a smart guy. Hey, I'm going to sit down and, have dinner before the game with the people on the beat or, any of the media members. Listen, that's smart play by you, not dissimilar to what you said about, James Dolan and Larry. But I always got the sense that Neil liked that. Like, you liked that part of it. Like, you understood the media, you respected what they did. Like you said, didn't always agree with them, didn't like, some things that were written or said on the radio, whatever. But I always got the feeling like you liked that part of it. And I don't know that I feel that way about many executives in the game anymore. Like, it is so difficult to get perspectives from executives in the NHL anymore. Not everybody, not every team, but that is the vast majority now. I guess now that you're kind of more on the media end now, and obviously you have a lot more, give and take with the movers and shakers in the game. I know it's a big wind up to a question, but what do you make of the change? And I hate to put it this way, but how much you miss those days, where there was more of a give and take between the two sides?
Well, Jim, that's a really good question and a really good thought. I started off in the business going to games at Madison Square Garden to report back to Al Arbor on the opponents, not just the Rangers, the opponents. And I sat in the press room every game, before games, between periods, after games, and I was friends with all the media. Because they were all pretty much my age. Everybody was starting out in their, whether they were a stringer or a radio guy or a TV guy or just a writer. And there was a lot more newspaper writers then than there are now. And so I got to know everybody and was friends with everyone. And I think that got me started in understanding the role of the media within this whole ecosystem, that they had a job to do. They were trying their best to do a good job. You just because they didn't know as much about hockey as maybe I knew because they hadn't played or they hadn't been a pro or a college player or something. That doesn't mean you shouldn't give them the amount of respect that they deserve as a person and as a writer. And by the way, if I tried to write the column, I couldn't write it because I don't have the writing skills. I had the hockey skills. So, and what I'm trying to say is everybody has their role to play, and everyone is doing the best they can within that role. And I figured that out very early, and I really enjoyed everybody and their perspective, and I enjoyed talking. And my media skills or skills to talk to the media, were strategic. Of course they were. They were strategic, meaning I wanted to make sure that these guys knew I was doing the best I could and knew that I was honest and that I was trying to do. But I also like to be liked, and that's a personality trait of mine. Many people have that. Some people actually, they don't care if they're not liked. And I think maybe Larry was one of those people, to be honest with you.
Yep.
I like to be liked, and I like to see people in a good light. And so I had a lot of fun with the media. I count them still as my friends, like Larry Brooks, as you said, like John Delapina, who wrote for the Daily News. Barry Mizell and I are still best of friends. We see each other all the time. And that's just to name a few. Carpinello, Mark Everson, Walt McPeak. I can go on. There's many, many more. And so, I liked all these guys, truly did like them. Now, if they wrote something negatively about me that I felt they were trying to hurt me, I got mad, and I was hurt because I didn't know why you would want to do that to me. If they wrote that I was making a bad decision, or they didn't like the player I got, or they didn't like, that's their right. And there's not much I can do other than grumble. But to be honest with you, I enjoyed that role of being around the media. And I got to tell you, I still enjoy what I do now, and going to Islander games and seeing everybody. I don't see the media as much, but I see all the regulars at every game. And it brings me back to the beginning when I was doing that for the Islanders.
Very cool. Let's bring it just quickly to the present. And, I know you're on short time today. We appreciate you joining us. Just a quick thought about the New York Rangers. This Jekyll and Hyde home road thing. I know the Rangers finally won a home game and everything. You've been around this game a long time. Had you ever seen such a distinct difference in wins and losses? Because they did play some good home games that they lost, but my gosh, to be the best road team in the league, but be the worst home team in the league, even with that win the other day. Had you ever seen anything like that, especially to come out of the gates that way?
No, I haven't. But I can honestly say that I could see that happening at Madison Square Garden, because
Right.
and I know how tough it can be in that building when things aren't going well. It is a snake pit when things are not going well. Now it can turn positive on a dime, and they'll be cheering for you like crazy. But I can imagine those players were squeezing their sticks, like probably putting fingerprint indentations into them. They were squeezing them so tough and trying to get a goal. And probably when they got on the road is when they relaxed, because they were on the road. They didn't have that pressure over them that was going on at the Garden. Now they broke that pressure against Nashville. We'll see what happens in their next home game. They played really well against the Lightning, although I got to tell you, that Lightning game was bizarre. You've got two of the best goalies in the world letting everything in the very beginning there, right? I mean, you've got Vasilevsky, 3 shots, 3 goals or something. Shesterkin down the other end, 4 shots and 2 goals or something. It was just crazy how that game went. But we'll see if the Rangers keep it going. I think you're right in using Jekyll and Hyde. I don't know what the Rangers are. I can't figure them out yet. Like, I don't know. If somebody said, are they going to make the playoffs? I'd say, I don't know. It depends which team shows up. So I think we're going to wait and see on that. Just to touch on the other New York team, I think we got to wait and see on the Islanders. How good are they? I mean, their season right now is being carried by Bo Horvat, and the fantastic start that he's had, scoring 12 goals already. So, but as for the Rangers, I think they definitely have holes. I think they definitely are not a really well constructed team at this point because they are missing some pieces. But how good are they? I don't know. I got to wait and see.
So real quickly, and again, just every time I try and set you up for the final question, you say something, I just got to feed off of it. So you said they're not well constructed. They're still missing some key pieces. What do you think are the biggest pieces, or what is the biggest piece that they're missing from what you've seen, again, from afar, not being in the locker room, not being on the bench or whatever? What do you see that they're missing the most?
Well, one of the things that I think they're missing is a Chris Kreider or himself, but a guy that's got great net front presence, that plays the game north-south, that doesn't play it east-west. They do have one of those now in their captain, in JT Miller. He definitely is a hard-nosed north-south type player, go to the front of the net, cause havoc and all that. But I think they need more of that. I think that where they have that element, it's not a top line players, it's more on the bottom six players. I think that they could use a little bit better defensively. They could play a little bit better defensively, although I can't be critical of it. It's just my thought. But I do know that, or do think that those power forward type guys like Kreider, when they weren't scoring at the Garden, I was saying all the time, I think they miss Chris Kreider, who's scoring tons in Anaheim. They need a guy like that in front of the net. So, again, I'm certainly not a genius when it comes to watching games on TV and figuring out what teams need. But that's from my eyes. I'm anxious to see what the Rangers morph into, because right now, as you said, they've only won that one game at home, or two games at home, but they're tremendous on the road. So this has got to even out at some point.
Okay, and quick final one for you. If you were a betting man, I love that line. Alain Vigneault would drop that on us all the time, every day. AV, is Henrik starting today? If I was a betting man, that's what he would always tell us. Oh, is so-and-so going to be in the lineup? Well, if I was a betting man, which is probably the wrong thing to say these days.
Yes,
sports,
yes.
Right? Especially this past week or two. But if you were a betting man, what do you think the future of Artemi Panarin is? Unrestricted free agent, end of the season. We've seen a lot of the younger top pending UFAs all re-sign with their teams. Panarin's going to be a little bit older, but arguably right now, if he stays healthy, he's going to be the top name on the market next summer unless he re-signs. So big wind up there. Where do you think it goes with Panarin?
I don't think the Rangers will let him walk. They just don't let star players walk. Should they let him walk is another question. Are they ever going to win with him? That's another question. But will they re-sign him and he does not walk away? I think they do. Would be my bet, that they do re-sign him.
And that is my hunch too. But I think they want to do it on their terms, but any team does, of course.
Of course.
I don't think at his age that they want to say, oh, another 5 years of Artemi Panarin. I think they'd rather keep it 2 to 3 years, maybe even pay him a little bit more, per annually, but keep it in that 2 to 3 year range. But we will see. We're just speculating, but I was curious to get your thoughts, and I appreciate you doing so, and really appreciate you jumping on. I know it's short notice and everything, but always enjoy talking hockey with you. And in today's case, talk some hockey, but also remembering Larry Brooks.
Yeah, and wish we didn't have to do this. I wish that Larry was still with us and that we didn't have to do this and we didn't have to wake up to that news today. And God bless him and his family. And we just know one thing, Jim. He's with his wife now. He's in a really good place, and I really believe that. And the people that will struggle now will be his loved ones, and he's not struggling anymore. He's, as I said, he's back with his wife and in a real good place. So God bless him and his family.
I appreciate that. It's a perfect wrap. And speaking of wrap, NHL wraparound, the podcast. What do you got on tap for the fans coming up?
Well, we just put a really fun show out with Stan Fischler that we did on generational players. We talked about what is a generational player. And Stan went back to Howie Morenz and started there.
He knows generations.
And we walked through everything that went on, and we gave our opinion on generational players and who are they really. Because the thing is today, everybody gets called a generational player, right? We've seen it with Bedard. It started there. Then we got it with Macklin Celebrini. And we're going to have it with this kid that's coming up. Yeah. And while Schaefer is on the island could be called that. And then you can call the kid coming out of Penn State.
McKenna.
Yeah, McKenna, he's going to get called that. But really, we said, who are generational players? How many of them are there? And if you watch the episode, I won't say it now. I could go on all day, as you know. But you'll see who we all think were generational players and what makes a generational player.
And if anybody knows, well, Neil Smith certainly knows, but Stan Fischler really knows. And as you said, that memory, unparalleled in the game right now. That's for sure.
Unparalleled. And if I can get to his age and be as sharp as he is, I'll have had a wonderful life. He is so knowledgeable. And, you think of people in their 90s and you think of them not being as sharp mentally, as it goes down. There's no way with him. He's just as sharp as he'd ever been.
Awesome stuff. Neil, thanks for joining us today. Best of luck with the podcast. And I think you have a couple dogs waiting for some breakfast over there.
I do. They're waiting for their breakfast, and then they're waiting to go to the bathroom. So
a 1-2 punch for Neil.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Neil.
Thanks, Jim.